All right, all right. It looks like it looks like things might be a little bit back to normal. I'm still having to do some workarounds with our stream to get things live in the way that we wanted to. So it's a I still worry about sometimes whether or not we're actually live, and I have to pull it up on other devices to check. But we are in fact live. It is March 10th. Brenda, it feels like it feels like time's just flying by. Uh,
Whether you're
welcome.
having fun or not, it's just zooming.
That's it. Did it. That's true. Yeah. Welcome to the HEF podcast. That is the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. It is an organization that was started by Brenda Dickinson back in the day, and she has, man, it was so wonderful to be. We'll talk. Hold on. But she was there at the beginning of home education in Florida, helped pin the bills, write it, and push for it to legitimize it and make it legal for parents so that educating your own children was not an illegal choice, a choice to do something that wasn't in the law, but it was helped make it something that parents could choose from and enroll in and have the right to do. And in the last 40 years, she's worked really, really hard to expand the rights of parents who choose home education as their convicted path. And my hat just constantly goes off to her. That's why I just don't wear hats anymore. I'd be constantly taking it off for her, but it's amazing what she's been able to do and accomplish. And there's so much um, progress that she's been able to make, and we're thankful to have her with us. And we oftentimes pick her brain. I do want to say a special thanks to our top sponsor, so we can get into things. But I'm realizing that in all the shuffle, I lost um, some of my screens. Uh, yeah, I lost some of my screens. So we'll still tell them thank you. We thank Arete, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group for being our top sponsors. We do have more coming on that front, and we hope to be able to introduce them as well. We thank them for all the work that they do and the support that they give. It does go a long way. We are not yet fully funded. I do work 2 full-time jobs. It is a lot of work. We rely on the support and donations of families across Florida who believe in the work that we do. They see it, they benefit from it, and they value it enough to drop $5 here or there. We have subscription tiers on our website under Support Us, and a lot of families. I get to see the names come through, and it's so invigorating and motivating to be able to know that you're with us, and you are supporting all the stuff that we're working hard. And let me tell you, we are working hard on some things. Oh my word! Oh my word! Take a deep breath. I'm gonna give Ben Shapiro a run for his money and how fast someone can talk. I think today because we got a lot to cover. The live at the Capitol didn't go so well because my phone was competing with the Wi-Fi signal in and out at the Capitol, so it was dropping us in limbo constantly. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. You actually got to see a sneak peek of the front of the Capitol before. I think we saw the newspaper people there taking pictures, but I think our pictures hit first on the internet. So you got to see it first. That's exciting. So let's dive into what we're doing. We have been working on getting a bill together that does many different things for, especially for PEP and UA families. So these are the families that choose home educate or homeschool and need to utilize a scholarship in order to kind of um, pull their resources together and make some of their options more palatable or more possible. And there are just some kind of little holes in things that Brenda has seen coming since the beginning, and even admittedly so, there was a very real need and a push, not a need, but a very real strong push to get this scholarship out there and going, regardless of kind of the state it was in. So there's some cleanup that needed to be done. We were looking at some very important things as far as protecting the home education community in this. and that the homeschool community in this. And there's a, oh man, HB 1565 is the bill that we're talking about. The companion bill for it is the Senate bill SB 240. No. That's the other one. 1440. 1440. We'll get to the other one in a second. And a couple other things that we're trying to do is one, digital devices. I think everybody loves that. They care about that. It's really hard to kind of say, hey, let's take that virtual class. That's a really good math class, or that's a really good thing over there. When you don't have a device to do it on. And there was a parent who raised a really, really good um, point over the course of the last week or 2 weeks in communicating with us. And she said that, now the SAT and the ACT, when you go to take them, they actually require you to bring your own device to take them on. Like how do you do that when you don't have one? Like that's a great point. Someone else pointed out that the other scholarships all allow it. This is the only one that doesn't. So it's very much a why not kind of factor. So we think that it's a very real need. Um, there are some people who push back and they're like, hey, well, what about too much screen time for young kids? And what if parents do this and that? And it's like we get all that, and I agree. Like screen time is not a wonderful thing to just be cramming down your children's throats, but at the same time, digital devices aren't just computers. There's a lot that falls into those categories, and there are some career and technical things that some of the older students, it would be good for them to have access to be able to get their hands on and practice with, because that experience, having experience with those tools, is really kind of the best way to learn on them. And it's just needed. So that's one of the things that's in the bill. I know that it's a favorite among everybody who kind of watches our stream. They're like cheering and going, yay. For me, I don't quite. I think it's important, but it's not the reason for the bill for us, for me at least. The real impetus, the real heart and soul part of pushing this bill is the home education instructional programs. That's very, very important to me, because that piece in particular is rooted in the history and legacy of home education in Florida. And something that happened early on in the scholarship program for PEP was that as soon as it launched, we had gotten the definition for home education instructional programs together, but they decided to put it in the purchasing guide. And the mention of home education instructional programs is in statute. The definition of that is in the purchasing guide. Well, as soon as it launched, there was a key piece of that that got pushed out. Key piece of that definition that got pushed out. And it was very important to us because it was the piece that required them to be in a non-residential location. And requiring that, what it did was it gave extra protection. Let's say that it's in a church, and a lot of them, home education instructional programs historically have been on church grounds, started in churches or synagogues or groups, and they have rules about fingerprinting and background checks and stuff for people who are on the campus working with children. They already have rules for those in those areas. So by requiring them to be in non-residential locations, kind of added a layer of protection that we saw that was there, and that immediately got pushed off. I don't know exactly who pushed it off, but I do know that it was at the pressure of some of these larger groups from outside the state that have quote unquote homeschool programs. They wanted to fit that definition, and they wanted to be able to start up their little groups, whatever they want to call them, in homes, and kind of start them and then grow them to, like, big numbers. And while that sounds good, and I love all of the options for parents to be able to choose from and have access to, I think that's very important. Let me be very clear about that. How a parent chooses to direct their child's education in what works best for their family is key, and it's critical, and that is what we fight to protect. I'm also very protective of the legacy of home education in Florida. The words home education are very, very importantly chosen by Brenda at the beginning, not calling it homeschooling, because she wanted to very early divorce the word school from the mindset of how a child is educated. That it isn't about school. It's not about a school system. It's not about a public school, a private school, or school in general. But it's about educating a child's mind. nurturing it, growing it, pouring learning into it. So education and the words home education, which she placed in law, very key, very critical, very important. And I see that the home education instructional programs as a direct link to that and very, very vital to protect. Um, if these programs want to happen this way, and what happened is they're removing that definition just allows all of them to kind of start being incubated left, right, and center and everywhere. And the programs aren't home education at heart. So that kind of brings us to the like, what is home education?
There's schools that meet in somebody's home. Thus, they're calling them home schooling, but it's
Yeah,
not home schooling.
yeah. I hear people saying like, well, when we started our homeschool, or we're starting a homeschool, we're starting a school in our home, we're starting a homeschool or a micro school or a learning pod or whatever it is. Essentially, and I, I love part of this. I love because you see public school teachers with a heart. They're certified and they have a heart to go. Hey, I had a dream of educating children, and when I go to the public school, I feel like I'm not doing that, and I want to. I think I can, and I want to, and I can be more nimble if I'm doing it on my own. So I'd like to start my own little micro school, and that's great. I love that. I love that. I'm just very cautious about the defining line ideologically, philosophically, and legally about what home education is. We need to very carefully call home education home education. A parent fully convicted in the responsibility of training their own children in the way that they should go is home education. I'll teach my children. When we start going, I'll teach the neighborhood's children. It's not home education anymore. We're starting to create a program or a group or, man, this is, I think, why they have a hard time finding a definition that or a name that they're willing to kind of sit under is because function and form, that's not the parents teaching their own kids anymore. And home education instructional programs are a business entity that has existed for the last 20 years that augments home education families. So a parent who says, man, I want to teach my kids. I love doing it. The time I have with them is precious and I love it. I want every second. And one day I'm going to let them go. But French is hard. Then they go to a home education instructional program and there's a French class. Or, hey, you know what? There's also robotics. Oh, robotics is great. And so the home education instructional programs provide the service of coalescing instructors into a hub and contracting with them so that they can be on campus at a certain schedule and provide their classes um, to augment a home education program that a parent has for their own kids.
Yeah, and a
And
key
thus they're
piece.
called instructional programs, home education
Yeah.
instructional programs. Go ahead.
A key piece of that is that the parent is still the one making all of those decisions. They are choosing which classes individually to have their child take. Each of their children may be taking different classes. They may be using it for their whole curriculum for the year, or they may only be taking one thing there. But they are still the ones, and most of those programs only meet 1 to 2 days a week. So they are still the ones directing their children's education, and those classes are a supplement. That's very different ideologically than dropping your kid off in someone's home as part of a little mini school program that's being run.
And you
Regardless of how good the instructors are in those homes,
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You may trust those people that you're dropping them off to. They may be your best friend next door, and it's like, hey, we got 5 families together, and like Susie Q is going to teach them all, and she does a great job, and that's awesome. That's great. Co-ops started that way.
And it's not to say that that's a poor choice. Like that may be a great option for some families, and we don't want to limit that, but it's just ideologically not the same thing as home education.
So when you see that definition in HB 1565, that definition is important because what it does is it reestablishes the non-residential location part of it. And for us, that's a big deal because the home education instructional programs historically weren't happening in homes. They're happening in churches or commercial locations that had like a layer of protection for the kids because it's out kind of in the public area and space. and it gets them out of secret places. When you're talking about state money, you're only one step away. Like, we've seen all of the stories, left, right, and center, pop up about. I saw some coming out of like Pensacola where they're talking about how homeschooling's the new wave of white supremacy. The white people don't want their kids to go to school with black and brown kids, and this is just racism. Homeschooling is racism. So you got that happening. You got people saying that the moment that the scholarship emerges, it's parents stealing money from the public school system and siphoning it off. And the truth behind that is that the public schools could have been providers in the PEP scholarship from day one, and they weren't. They weren't.
They didn't want
There's
to.
only 10 of the 67 counties that have
2
even
years later.
signed up to be a provider.
That's right.
And even if a parent wanted to send their child to a public school for math because they can't teach algebra or don't want to relearn algebra, the school said, nope, you've chosen to be out of the school. We don't want your money.
But the media blows it up and tells a different story. So you can only imagine that the kind of stories that are going to land when something happens to a child who, is trafficked or abused in a setting like that, while state money is being thrown at it. And oh my goodness, what are these home education instructional programs?
Yeah,
So
or
at the very least,
even something as simple as just a safety issue, a fire in the home or something like that. Because again, churches and public buildings are required to have
certain fire
occupancy codes and fire codes, and they get fire inspections. So there's just a lot of things that are not being necessarily addressed whenever you have a group of kids meeting in someone's home.
Sure.
And that exact situation is occurring in Broward County right now, and there's a lawsuit pending on whether they have to have sprinklers. You're right, that because now it's a school in the home,
right,
and they want to impose those kinds of zoning issues on them.
And things like this are muddied when we call them home schools, or we call them micro schools, home education instructional program. So in the scholarship, it's called a home education instructional program, but over here we call it a micro school. Over there we call it a learning pod. But it's getting as big as a small private school, or some of them are, 200 students. Some of them are large, and so they're like almost as big as a little public school. But we're calling them home education and this. So there's just a lot. There's just a lot of nebulous language being mixed together, and what we were trying to protect against is home education and the legacy of it being used as a catch-all phrase for every program that's just not public or private school. I was talking with somebody earlier, and I was like, imagine if there's no rules and regulations. You just have options, right? There's a public school down the road. Take your kids and drop them off to learn if you want to. That's a public school. Great. There's private schools. You can go drop your kids off there too. It costs you out of pocket, and it costs a little bit more, but you can do it. And then there's everything else, right? And in that everything else category, we kind of lump all the other options, and there's no line. There are programs that are like schools but not a school, but almost as big as a school, and it's a full program, and you drop your kids off, but then you still do homework like you would out of a public school, so you're still kind of participating. And there's just a lot of lines where everything's blurry and confusing. And ultimately, I don't care what parents want to do. Do it. You want to be able to do it and train your kids up and help them find success in life in the way that you think is best and know is best for them. Your child. Do that. That's what we want for you. We just want to be very careful, because laws are not made for the people who are good. Right? The law-abiding citizen, really, it's not made for them. Laws are made for when the stuff hits the fan, something goes wrong. How and who do we hold accountable? That's what laws are for. So then whenever it comes down and it's like, oh, these are home education instructional programs, that's the who, and the how is, whoa, the money is going this way and they're allowed to do this and that. And then now all that how starts to get trimmed back. And what we don't want is for any of that to be the issue. So, if the intent in the legislature kind of intends to move in the direction where they pull that out, if they agree with certain people, like we shouldn't make a distinction about whether they're in homes or not. We're going to seek to not call them HEIPs anymore. We're going to seek to have them called something else.
Yeah,
or
because
nothing at all.
Yeah, just to clarify, because the term home education is attached to HEIPs currently. And so any restrictions, any media blowback, anything, the general public doesn't have all these nuances that Jason is describing right now. And so they're going to think these are home education families that are just going crazy. And all the backlash and regulations are going to be starting pushed on home education instead of the programs that actually were the ones with these issues. So we don't want that term home education attached to programs that are functioning in this way, because we just want to make it clear that your typical home education family is a parent educating their own children. That's a difference between what's happening with all these other programs.
What was that?
What?
I heard a sound. I think somebody. Oh, I think I have notifications on for like when somebody comments or does something. It scared me. Y'all didn't hear it, I guess.
No, I didn't hear it.
Oh, all right. I'll have to figure out. My ADD is not going to like that. So that's part of HB 1565. Brenda, you look like you're about to say something. You go ahead.
Well, we're pushing very hard for what you're talking about, but we're also recently, over the weekend, been made aware that they may not even hear our bill because.
Yes.
You want to go into that more?
Sure. Just raise your hand if I say too much. I'll be very careful. So we had gotten a call and been informed that there was a shift early on. There wasn't an appetite for a committee bill for education at all. And it seems like maybe after seeing 70 education bills pop up, and then some of the concerns that we raised and the work that we were doing behind the scenes for pushing the very real issue of the rapid expansion and explosion of options and the need for definitions, that they were like, okay, we're just going to do a committee bill then and figure this out. So our bill is likely to be set aside and not make it through. So don't be alarmed if you see that. But we are continuing to work with leadership and our senators and representatives to get the things that are in this bill heard and implemented into a new bill, along with some other ideas that might help clarify some of those other issues and kind of split it out. I can't speak about what I do know is coming in that bill because it hasn't landed yet.
And we won't know what's in it until it becomes public.
We haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see it at the same time we see it.
Yes, that's right.
So I would suggest that you tell your friends to stay tuned to this podcast so that we can keep you up to date, what you need to do, whether we need to react to this. We're being told, oh, you're going to like the bill. But they're also telling us they're not going to define home education instructional programs. They apparently don't have a problem with these groups meeting in homes. They have their own ideas because they don't want to limit innovation. Well, I'm not for limiting innovation.
Right.
And, I would like to have run one of those schools in my home because I wanted some community for my kids. So I'm not opposed to them, but I'm definitely not in support of just lumping them all together and saying they're the same. They're not the same.
We had some really good discussion over the weekend on, all of this that we're talking about today. So I'm glad that it's at least being deeply discussed. Like it's not being addressed lightly. Even if they're not wanting to define HEIPs, they are at least mulling around these concepts that we've brought up today. How that's going to land in the bill, I'm not sure, but
I think our biggest problem is that people don't understand home education. Thus, the Share Your Story project. They do not, they think they know what it is, but when you have an educator running the bill who's never had a child in home education and has no concept or idea of what actually takes place across the state in our community, they think they're doing us a favor, but that's because they don't understand.
Mm-hmm. And
they don't know what they don't know. What can I say?
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's hard to know what you don't know, and when things are happening so rapid paced that they don't have time to stop and think about it, that's one of the big reasons why the Tell Your Story project focuses on small, bite-sized pieces of content that will encapsulate a story. What we're looking for is that less than 60-second clip, or what does home education look like for us? Why is it important? Why do we choose to do it? What impact have we seen with it? And that's it. Roll some B-roll of your kids studying or digging in the yard. We've seen some wonderful pictures come in through one of our forum posts that we had where we were asking, what does homeschooling mean to you? I very specifically just said homeschooling there because I wanted everybody who uses that word generally to kind of just catch on to it. But yeah, that's ultimately what we're looking for. And if you're not comfortable in front of a camera, you want to write yours down. Write it down. Write your testimony down. Take some pictures of what you're doing. Send it in. And what we'll do is we'll edit it down to a blog-size article. Send it back to you with your approval. And if you like the edits, we'll post it up. And you can be a guest article writer on our blog with your story there. The videos we intend to make it to YouTube. Heather Dole says, "I heard the sound." Oh yeah, good. I'm not alone. She said, "When do you anticipate seeing that, Bill?" Probably within the next week or two, is what we've been told. Christina.
Not this week, but probably next week.
Yeah. Christina
We're running out of time.
They are. Yeah, very much so. Christina Cunningham says, "I'm so thankful that you are having this conversation. It's much needed. I admit I get incredibly frustrated with some direction home education is going because it is getting momentum as a business opportunity rather than a family choice to educate at home." Yep. And there are too many, quote, loose definitions of home education. So, if I could offer you a consolation, the definition for home
Consolation.
education. What did I say?
Constellation.
Yeah, well, a constellation too. Look to the. No, I'm kidding. Did I say constellation? Okay, consolation. I think some comfort. Home education has a legal definition, a specific definition. Homeschooling doesn't, and homeschooling is the kind of big, broad term everyone throws around. We started homeschooling this, or we started a homeschool in our yard, or we go to a homeschool co-op, or our little homeschool does this.
Or we hired private tutors to teach our children.
Yeah, we homeschool.
But they're not homeschooling. They're not home educating. They do have parent choice, and they are spending their money, but they hired somebody else to do their work.
And it's interesting because the homeschooling is such a colloquial term, but in other states, I do believe it's called homeschooling. Here in Florida, it's not, because we wanted to differentiate between school and education. That's a very important delineation for us, and we're continuing to try to find that philosophical divide, find that line, keep it crisply defined, while all the expansion and, like you said, pop-ups are happening, because you're not wrong. There's a lot of programs, many from out of state. A lot of them are just boom, 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 boom. I've even seen advertisements where, like, homeschooling is hard. We'll help you homeschool.
Can I speak to that for just a second?
Sure, go ahead.
Because Jason made a good point over the weekend. I follow a lot of Facebook discussions parents are having um, around home education in general, but also around PEP. Because early on, there was just so much confusion and so many questions and so much false information being shared about PEP that I started kind of tracking the groups to answer people's questions. But one of the things that I've seen discussed a lot, not just lately, but since the inception of PEP, is this idea that the scholarship is corrupting home education, that it is just bringing out of the woodwork all of these people that are, wanting to pounce on this money making opportunity. And on the one hand, they're not wrong. That is happening. But it was already happening prior to PEP. Um, I saw it happening even during COVID when people were pulling their kids out of school, and all of a sudden there were all of these things. Oh, you don't know what to do with your kids? I can help you with that.
Oh, yeah.
The difference is that the scholarship has sort of accelerated the appearance and aggressiveness of these programs because now they know that there are parents who have the funds to throw at it. So it existed before, and the ideological struggle between a parent educating their own children at home and parents who pull their kids out of public school and say they're homeschooling but are really doing some other combination of things than home education. That's been going on a long time. And I know because I used to direct an HEIP and we would get those parents in our program. I was at that HEIP for almost 10 years. And we would get those parents in our program even prior to COVID who the ideology of home education being the parents who just really wanted to be home with their kids or really didn't want their kids in the public school. Now there are so many other motivations for home education. Everything from the mom needs to work full time, but wants her kids to not be in a public school. And so she's trying to piece together something with tutors and all different resources. All the way to what we saw happening in COVID, where people were just like, this just isn't working, or maybe their kid has a health issue and they need to be able to do something more flexible than a typical school program. Or some on the positive end, there were some parents that their kid was really passionate about something or really into a sport and they needed the flexibility to be able to travel and train. And so I've seen so many different reasons that people are pulling their kids, that home education, the landscape for who's choosing to do it is just different than it used to be in the early days, I think.
Yeah.
And so that was already happening, but the scholarship absolutely accelerated the appearance of all of these different programs that really are coming. The ones that bother me the most, and I hope it's okay to say this, are the ones coming from out of state that just see what's happening in Florida and see it as a cash grab opportunity. And they're sprouting up in Florida because of the scholarship. They didn't pre-exist. They weren't trying to serve the home education community prior to that money. Those are the ones that I am most concerned about, because parents who are new to home education or who are new PEP families may not have all the context to filter through which programs are predatory and which ones aren't. So that's a concern for me. But
and I think there is a practical element to encouraging home education instructional programs to root in non-residential locations, because in order to do it, say on church grounds or something, you have to have relationships. You have to build those relationships, connect with your community, get them to believe in your mission and what you're doing, and pull that together. And it's a great place. And whether that's the community center or a church building or a different location, in order to share some of that space, like, you have to partner with people and connect with them, and you end up practically having some sort of like anchor in the community, not just something from outside coming in and popping up. I think along that line, there's one of the criticisms of the scholarship program has been that it's going to ruin everything because it's going to drive up prices and all of that. And I think I can't say that an access of funds people don't go, oh, cool, now that there's more money available, we could charge higher prices. I think I've seen some of that. I've definitely have seen programs pop up and go, oh, well, how much scholarship do you have? Oh, no way. That's what our tuition is. So
How convenient.
convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. How cool is that? But I've also seen programs that have existed historically, especially the home education instructional programs, go, oh wow, we're not going to do that. We're gonna increase it just a little bit to add this program or to add that on, and they've got a mission oriented piece.
Because
But
costs have increased just naturally because of the economy. I've seen that happen.
mm-hmm.
I know of programs that increased their prices and it had nothing to do with PEP. The timing
Yeah,
just happened to coincide.
yeah, and I saw a really good study put out, and they were talking about the rise of private school tuition, and how it's seen an increase, and it's irrespective of the scholarship money. And I thought that was interesting. But what it does coincide with is real estate, which is very interesting. It's kind of like uh, one of my statistics professors back in the day would always ask this question to kind of test people, like, you see people eating ice cream, and you see a bar graph, and like people eating ice cream goes up on the bar graph, and like at the same time as that goes up on the bar graph, so do shark attacks. And you come to the conclusion that eating ice cream causes shark attacks, so therefore stay away from ice cream or the sharks may get you. And he was making the point that, like, statistically speaking, not everything is a cause effect. Sometimes things happen, they coincide and happen together, they correlate, but they aren't necessarily causal. Um, and what's interesting is it's easy to look at the scholarship and go, oh, the scholarship came in. Oh, actually, it was the other way around. Prices will go up, and then the scholarship comes, but everybody's paying attention to the scholarship, and then suddenly notice the price increases from the private schools. What really it coincides with is the influx of people to Florida, the real estate boom, the influx of cash on hand for that. There's a higher demand on private schools, and there's a scarcity in private schools. So now it's very difficult to start a private school in Florida. So you have scarcity and limitation, but you have a massive increase in demand. But what happens among scarcity? Prices go up.
Yeah.
When something is scarce and rare, its value increases, and therefore the price goes up.
Well, and a similar thing that I saw happening among the HEIPs was just flat real estate cost. Like rent is going up. The rent of the facility that they use, those programs are now being charged sometimes double, triple what they were previously being charged. And so the increase is an attempt to offset their costs. And most of the programs that have been around a long time that I know of were increasing their costs as little as they could possibly get by with because they don't want for the families to have to pay that much extra.
I've seen that.
So if I would just have this one piece of advice, if you are one of those people, because I've had people tell me, and I've seen posts that they were, in their area, they know for sure that when PEP hit, the home education instructional program prices went up, and they're convinced that it's because the program is making a cash grab for scholarship funds. If you're in a program that you're convinced is doing that, find a different program. That would be my advice. Like any program that has a heart to truly serve the home education community, I think is not going to be making that kind of move. They're not going to be trying to bleed your scholarship dry. That's just not the heart of these HEIPs.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment completely. And I think that there are many, 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 many ways to use your scholarship. So think outside of that box and expand, because they can charge whatever they want to charge, but if people don't pay it, they ain't getting it. So you do have choices, and exercise them. Be savvy consumers. Be savvy consumers. That on that point, we do one of the eligibility requirements for HEIPs is that they have a website with their classes and offerings and costs and prices publicly reviewable. That is one of the things that has to be a criteria for them to be an HEIP. and provide within the scholarship parameters. So hopefully that helps provide some protection as well.
And I do want to add a level of hope to this discussion. From my understanding of the conversations we've had with the people that are working on this bill, one of their main driving motivations is to give parents more decision-making authority. They want the authority to be in the parents' hands to choose things that work best for their family. So that's a great thing. I mean, I don't know how the actual details and language of the bill are going to land, but that heart to leave it in the parents' hands to make the decisions for their own children, that's an amazing shift to have behind legislation. And so I'm really thankful that that's happening.
Yes.
The nuances of what that looks like may need to be debated, but that the fact that they're not wanting to add regulations, they're actually wanting to give parents more options and more freedom to choose, is a really good thing.
I oftentimes find myself being Inigo Montoya. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And having to come back to that. So like you said, sometimes it's in the details, but I can echo that. I've seen in conversations with leadership and various positions and senators and representatives that there is a heart to let the parents lead. And it's the parents' children. They're your children. You lead the decisions. And, you know, I can echo that that's what I've seen. Again, though, it does come down to like, what are the words we're using? How does that look? Is that really what we've effectuated?
Right.
Our intent is one thing. Have we effectuated?
Yeah, whether we've achieved that is another. Yeah.
So I'd like to move. This has dominated a huge part of the conversation, and I'd like to get over to the other issue that we've been working on, because this one is no less vital. It's no less vital whatsoever. But it is HB 151 and SB 248, and this is the private school extracurricular bill. And we had been working with a senator on a bill that would do this and more. They beat us to the filing, and so they filed first. And once they got their bill filed, there was no longer a taste for having a bill on the exact same subject. So we're working to try to get the language that we need into the existing bill, and those are the two existing bills. Ways that you can help us. Something that you can do that would be extremely helpful. I'm going to lay out what the issue is in a moment, but I want to front lead with this. If you have a student who you have tried to place sports at a public school, and you were trying to play for a school that you were trying to choose, not necessarily your zoned school, and you were given difficulty in that, if you could write down what your experience was and email that to us. What we're finding is that some districts are just like, cool, you pick the school, go play, because the statute 1006.15 allows the parent to choose a school that they're zoned for, or a school they could choose through open enrollment. And some districts are just flat out saying, you can only play for your zoned school. You can only play for your zoned school. And they're operating irregardless of what the statute says. They just kind of seem to be ignoring it, like bulldozing through. Other districts have become a little bit more nuanced, in which they're saying things like, oh, well, that school's at capacity, so it's no longer on the list of schools you could choose from. We removed them. So they're playing a little game where they have a list of schools, and there's an on or off switch of those schools, rather than it being a school you could choose. They go, oh, well, we don't allow you to choose from that school because it's at capacity. And the argument is poor. It's one in which they say there are no academic seats available for math or science, so your kid can't play baseball. Make that make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't, and it's being used in bad faith to deny access to something that is very clearly spelled out in statute, and we're trying to restore that clarity with some of our language. In 1996, the statute didn't have capacity limitations that were brought on almost 20 years later by an amendment to the Constitution. So there were no capacity limitations when it originally was launched, and so it was a school that you could your zone school or a school that you could choose through open enrollment, go. And since then, and since the uh, capacity constraints that were put on schools for the academic seats, the core curricula teaching capacity that they have, it has created a little loophole that is being abused. And that loophole is the one that we're trying to close in these two bills. And what we need from you that would be helpful is your testimony if you have tried. I have seen from parents that some parents start to try to do it. The home education office and the school district or the district athletic directors will kind of give them a cold shoulder, and then they just kind of give up. So they're like, this is a lot to deal with. I don't want to deal with this, and they'll give up. And I understand. I understand that. But then there are parents who go, no, this is spelled out right here, and they push back a little. And then they get some sort of conversation that goes back and forth, and the district will either argue with them and tell them no and hold that line, or they will defer responding long enough that tryouts are over and it doesn't matter. And so we get these little shuffle arounds, and then there's one particular case out of Duval right now that they are still going back and forth, and it is reaching like civil lawsuit levels, which is very interesting because they'll say something, and this particular homeschool dad he's keen, man. He has laser focus, and he says things and he just lets them talk, and then he saves what they said, and he's keen, and I appreciate it, but he is saving all of that information. So whether you fall into any one of those 3 or 4 experience types, it would be really useful to have your testimony about if you've tried to play public school sports, what has happened to you. I learned over the last week or two that there was a young girl who ran into a similar situation, and through a little bit of pressure on the school, the superintendent had decided that, it could be read both ways. We'll let you play. So they let her play. And she played and was a starter for soccer for 2 or 3 years. And in her senior year, which is this year, I guess last year, a couple of parents started to complain. There's all these homeschool kids on the team. What is up with this? And this year, the statute allows you to try out. It doesn't guarantee you a spot on the team. And we aren't looking for a guarantee. We are just looking for eligibility to participate. But what they did to her was they said, oh, you don't make the team this year. Thanks for trying out. After she's been a starter for like the last 3 years, and so sad little things like that are the reason why I get so fiery and lit over some of these things.
And the thing about that, Jason, is according to the FHSAA rules, once you try out at one school, you cannot try out at another school. So if the districts were going to pull that kind of nonsense on her, they should have told her up front, you can try out, but you're not going to be able to play at this school.
Mm-hmm.
She could have gone somewhere else. Now they've knocked her out of her senior year participating in soccer, and that's not fair.
That's right. Yeah, it isn't fair. It isn't fair. And there's a Zig Ziglar quote that says, when money is spent, you can always make more money, but when time is spent, it's gone forever. And that's that's kind of the driving, one of my core driving philosophies in this is we're trying so hard to fight for parents' rights, to be your voice at the Capitol, so that
Yes.
you have someone walking the halls for you, speaking up for you, saying, hey, what about this person? Hey, don't forget about this family. Hey, look, this family is one instance, but it's happening in a lot of moments where families just give up because they're being put through the ringer, and they shouldn't be being put through the ringer. This is wrong. So if you could help us send your testimonies in like that, mention your county so that I at least know what county you're in. That way I can track down which representative I need to speak to on your behalf and ask for them to weigh in on the bill when it's time. That bill is HB 151 and SB 248. Representative Abbott has the House, and the Senator Simon has the companion bill in the Senate. Um, and we've had some great conversations with Senator Simon's staff. It was they're listening to us, and they're working with us. We're struggling right now to have that same kind of impact and influence on the House representative who's running the bill. So if you are in his district, Representative Abbott's district, especially if you're in his district, I would love to hear from you if you have any stories about how this has impacted you, because that may be the only way to get his attention. Uh, Anyway, that's bringing us to a close call and a wrap up for today. We didn't have a very deep one yet last week because we were at the Capitol and we were live. So I want to make sure that we're doing our best to keep you updated on what's going on, what's happening, what's being talked about. And if you're in any of these Facebook conversations and you're getting worried about things or you see things, by all means, feel free to jump on here and ask questions. Every Monday we go live at noon. You can jump in the forum and ask questions. You can email us directly. In the forum, if you're asking questions, everybody else gets to benefit from that ongoing conversation. We don't mind responding to your emails as well, but that's a between us girls kind of thing, like just us conversation. And there are so many people who could benefit from some of these conversations being had in an open space like our forum. So, by all means, if you find yourself having questions, ask them. Ask them. Brenda, Crystal, anything you want to add?
Just because we're not at the Capitol doesn't mean that we're not working. Over the weekend, we had some pretty significant conversations on Saturday about our bills, and it strongly presented our side of it as to what we want to see in the upcoming bills. And fortunately, with technology, we don't have to be in the Capitol, but some days we have to be in the Capitol to catch the people we need to catch. So, if we're not there and broadcasting from the Capitol, doesn't mean we're not working. And
That's
it's
right.
not, we're working really hard on your behalf. It takes a lot of time.
It's constant.
People don't realize how much time.
Late nights, early mornings, long drives, constant phone calls.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I would love to be able to bring on some interns and get them to help with some of the things that we need heavy lifting on. It's very useful and experiential type stuff, but we need to raise more funds. So, um, anyway, thank you so much for watching and being with us today, and thank you for all of the questions and the comments. I really appreciate seeing the engagement. If you final call to action is if you are interested in being kind of like an area um, leader. If you're looking at, I'm one of those. If you look at yourself and you go, I'm one of those people who can help get the word out about things. I would like to extend an invitation to you to join our Discord app. We have created a Discord channel in which we're gonna try to help start putting together area ambassadors who can help us get the word out when things are important um, in their areas, and we can put resources there and help share graphics or files or do little mini workshops or town hall meetings, all inside this communication app server that we've developed. And at first, I would like to just kind of get people who are interested and who can be useful helping say, oh, I wish it did this or I wish it did that, and we can try to look at some features and update it before we roll it out to like everybody. So if you're one of those people who you're like, I am always sharing information with my homeschool community, and I would love to be able to be one of the first people to get some of the information and help share it out, send me an email at info@flhef.org and just say, add me to the app or interested in new app or app go, whatever is easiest. And what I'll do is I'll start making a list of people to send invites to and pull you in and start getting your feedback so that we can pull the trigger on that soon. Outside of that, I think today's a wrap. So thank you all for watching and being with us. We really appreciate all of the time and energy that you put into your families and educating them and making those memories and building them up to be um, strong-minded people who are formidable, critical thinkers, and have a good, strong moral compass. And you want to turn them loose on the world and let them be leaders and strong citizens. And we appreciate you and all the sacrifices that you make to be home educators. Without any further ado, I'm going to let you guys have your Monday back. Enjoy this exit music, and we'll call it a day.